So then you leave the Real Housewives and you and Marcellus do this very brave thing, which is actually go to the Trump White House. It's not like going to the Biden White House or the Obama White House or, a Clinton White House. It's the orange man bad, Hitler, right. Trump. What made you say yes to that invitation?
You know what? It's the White House. For me, it wasn't even a deterrent that it is a Trump White House. You get invited to the White House. For me, it's a bucket list thing. And it was the most incredible day. I will tell you that. We were surrounded by so many open-minded, inspiring, and welcoming people. It was an absolutely fantastic ceremony. His address to all of us there was incredible. He honored so many wonderful Black Americans, and he really instilled so much hope in every one of us that was there. It was an absolutely fantastic day.
Now, am I correct that Marcellus doesn't like Black History Month? I think I've heard him say.
No, you know what? Ask him that question because he will answer those kinds of things in his own unique sort of way.
What are the two of you sitting there like, and he's like, and you're like, no, it's good, it's good.
And that's the other thing is people always think that a married couple has to agree on everything, and we do not. We do not agree on everything all the time. That's why it was very interesting. Again, going back to when we were labeled as transphobic, we had a lot of things that we disagreed on. And I was never someone that spoke publicly about that. And he was. And it was because he did and because of his views that it was assumed that those were my views as well. But, I had never been asked if I was a Republican or Democrat. As I told you, I was a lifelong Democrat until this election cycle. And in terms of the transphobia issue, I was a lifelong athlete. I actually need bilateral knee replacements now because of what I gave to my sport. And it's just very interesting how that was something that Marcellus said so many years ago. And now there are so many people that are coming out. It's almost like it is acceptable to say that. Like Stephen A. said it recently, right? Someone who works for ESPN, he said it recently. And so that really points to, okay, well,
I think we have that actually, Annemarie. Let me play that just so people know what you're talking about. Stephen A. Smith weighed in recently.
Yeah. LGBTQ rights and all of that stuff, I'm in full support of that. But when transgender athletes, men, are transitioning to women and they're competing in female sports, that's a different animal to me. That's not just about LGBTQ rights. That's about prying on the rights of females out there everywhere who were born female and they're at a decided disadvantage.
Right on. Amen. Keep going.
And again, that is something that 80% of the country is in alignment with. And there are certain things that you just cannot overlook, right? Heart size, lung capacity, VO2 max, oxygen carrying capacity. Those are just things that are undeniable, and they're not about hatred. They're not about transphobia. They're not about bigotry. They're just science, and it's fairness and safety.
Your sport was basketball?
Correct.
So we just went on Saturday night. We went to Madison Square Garden and we watched Duke play Illinois. It's college teams, but they make the trip to like one of the bigger arenas every once in a while. And I mean, that Duke team is like a dream team. They were unbelievable. This is the men. They were so good. It was just like a thing of beauty. It reminded me of back when I just graduated law school and I saw the dream team, the Chicago Bulls with Jordan and Pippen and all those guys play, where it's just like a thing of beauty on the court. Like it's almost like a dance more than a sport almost. You know what I mean? Where it's just like there's a flow where you're like, wow. And I don't know anything about sports, but that's how I felt watching it. But the thought of any one of those guys going over and playing against the women, any one of them would be a total game changer, a literal game changer in every game in which he played.
Exactly. And I'm like, and we're a sports family. Like my husband played in the NFL for 10 years. And he didn't play basketball and he could still beat me. I would never in a million years want to play against him. My 9-year-old son could probably beat me now. And another interesting thing is there's a clip of Serena Williams like years ago on Letterman. And she was talking about how I think it was Andy Roddick had asked her if she would play against the men. And she said no. She said, no, you would beat me 6-0 and I like to play against the women. So she really addressed this a long time ago before this was a, hot button, no-go zone topic. But because it was before this, it flew under the radar. But really, she addressed this and said the same thing.
Well, it's incredible because that sort of camel's nose under the tent of like, well, let's just be fair and let these so-called trans kids play in sports, and forget what it does to the girls, has now the full camels under the tent where they're really erasing women. Every day you awake to a new story. Thank God Trump is fighting back against it. But the left is not letting go of this easily. The trans activists are the most rabid of all activists. And the latest nonsense comes out of Washington State where, no, forgive me, there is something in Washington State, but this one's from Wisconsin, where the governor, Tony Evers, has decided to refer to the people who would benefit from his IVF law, protecting IVF procedures, as inseminated persons. That's instead of mothers. Here he is defending the decision, SOT 34.
That more gender neutral. What was behind that decision, and do you stand by it?
Of course I do. It's absolutely, what the Republicans say is a lie. So of course I'm pretty PO'd about that. So I didn't know that Republicans were against IVF, but apparently they are, because that is what that's about. Moms are moms, dads are dads, and what we want is legal certainty that we're able to have, that moms are able to get the care they need. That's it.
Totally dodging his decision to refer to mothers as inseminated persons. No man can be an inseminated person carrying a baby.
Yeah, I think this is really one of the reasons why I say that I didn't leave the Democratic Party left me. I can't think of any woman that is okay with being referred to as an inseminated person. It just goes so far away from valuing mothers and, really paying homage to what we go through to be given that blessing. It's really indefensible.
And by the way, not for nothing, but I've done IVF. I used it for my kids. And you're not technically an inseminated person when you do IVF. You're having something implanted in you that's an embryo. The semen happens outside of the body when you do use IVF, Governor Evers, if you really want to get technical. But truly, think about the term and how kind of gross it is. You say mother, and you think of a soft place to fall, a fierce mama bear who protects her young against the most ardent threats. You think about somebody who is both loving and caring and nurturing and strong, providing guidance and discipline where necessary. And when you say inseminated person, I'm sorry, all I picture is a penis ejaculating inside of a woman's birth canal. That's what it really is. It reduces you down to sperm, to semen. Yeah. That's all motherhood now is. It's so offensive.
Yeah, it really does. And, it's happening in the name of inclusion. And I think that's where a lot of people also get lost, because you're using terms like, if you don't agree with this, then you're not being inclusive, or you're being transphobic because of that. And you're really doing it in a way to silence people and force hate their way for not going according to a certain agenda. And, all we're saying here is, no, we're women. We want to be respected as such and appreciated as such, and not just, relegated down to labels that don't value us as who we are. And I think that's really what's happening.
So we talked on the show yesterday about the loony Maine governor, Janet Mills, who's trying to make a name for herself by not enforcing the Trump federal EOs on gender and boys trying to play girls' sports. She's going to lose, but that one's playing out in the courts. And then I mentioned Washington State. Now we have the education chief defending so-called trans athletes, claiming it is inaccurate to say that there are only two genders. Here is that man, Chris Rakadal, in SOT 33.
It is quite simply inaccurate to say biologically that there are only boys and there are only girls. There's a continuum. There is a science to this. There are children who are born intersex. There are children whose chromosomes and their hormones aren't consistent with their sex at birth. Our state laws make clear that students get to identify and participate in activities based on the gender in which they identify.
I'm sorry, that's just creepy. It's such a mind-bending alteration of reality.
Yeah, while I do understand and I do appreciate that there are some gray areas, right? There are some situations where I do feel like the situation needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. But I think when it's something that is just very clear-cut of the XX versus XY, I think we just need to go back to the basics and understand that once someone who was assigned male at birth goes through puberty, there are undeniable physical differences that exist that hormone replacement or, blockers and things like that, they can't account for that difference. And it does become an issue of safety, and it does become an issue of fairness. And it's not about trying to exclude anyone from participation. If you look at it the other way, when you have trans male athletes, they're still competing with the females. But it's only becomes an issue when you have the trans women that are competing with the
men.
Women.
Yeah.
Right.
Can I ask you a question, Annemarie? Because
Yeah.
you said assigned male at birth, that's leftist ideology. Because I wonder why you say that. I know it's leftist language, but I see the cross around your neck, and I know you don't believe God makes mistakes on babies. And when the baby comes out male, it's a boy. It's not assigned anything by a man or a woman who happens to be an MD. So I just wonder why you use that term.
I do that in only the vein of not offending anyone. I think, I have no problem with anyone wanting to live their life the way that they choose, do what makes you happy. I think it only becomes an issue when there are other people that are being affected by it. And, if someone doesn't want to use that language, you can't force them to use that language. If someone, once you come into spaces where women don't feel comfortable, that's when it needs to be respected. So really, I'm just offering respect that I would hope that we would get back as women.
We continue to face uncertainty when it comes to the economy, with a perfect storm brewing as Social Security and Medicare hit a breaking point as the largest generation is hitting retirement. A smaller workforce means a smaller tax base. You pair that with our growing national debt and rising cost of living, and we could have a big problem. So what are you doing now to protect your family for the future? Well, gold can be a safe haven in hard economic times, and Birch Gold makes it easy to diversify a portion of your savings into physical gold. Birch Gold will help you transition an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold, and it does not cost you 1 cent out of pocket. Protect your future today. Text MK to 989898 and get your free info kit on gold and a copy of the Ultimate Guide for Gold in the Trump Era with a foreword by Donald Trump Jr. There's no obligation, just information. Birch Gold has earned the trust of countless Americans looking to safeguard their savings. Just text my initials MK to the number 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.